Hello fellow villagers and welcome to my channel, Darren's Villaging and More. With my Halloween display fully up and operational behind me, I've already started making the switch over to working on my Christmas village. Now this year, I'm doing something new. Doing a new platform called Holiday Hills to hopefully have a bit of a vintage fun vibe with it. So today, we're going to be working on a lighted accessory for that Christmas platform called the Lemax Merry Christmas Yard sign. I really like this piece when it's not plugged in. The original shipping LEDs were just overly orange and kind of just washed all of this out. So come join me as I reimagine this for my Holiday Hills Christmas village. Here we have the Lemax Merry Christmas Yard sign, introduced in 2010 and retired in 2015. Thanks to the Lemax Collection website, we know the approximate dimensions are 1.6 inches tall by 4.33 inches wide and 0.47 inches deep. Come join me as I get this piece ready for my Holiday Hills display by changing out those orange LEDs. Welcome to the bench. Here we have the Lemax Merry Christmas Yard sign, and on each side it has stakes or stabilizers. Mine broke off when I tried to move it on one side. The other side seemed to be fine. However, let's go ahead and look at this. Now there is what appears to be a lid on the base of this. Now I do not see any excess glue on the outside, but I do see the backing is peeling, so we'll definitely have to glue that back into place later. Let's go ahead and twist this one, and as you can see, this one turns as it's supposed to, so you can either stick it into foam or spread those out so it stabilizes this piece. I use tacky wax in my villages, so I'm not terribly concerned about this. To break this figure down, I'm going to be using a hairdryer today on high heat and using a hook pick tool to work the lid off of the base. The base on this yard sign is on there very well, so I am going to take my time and give plenty of heat to this. I want the base of this to be very warm to the touch. Now I am holding this with my fingers and they are slightly burning as I'm doing this, but I think we're almost to a point where we can start prying. The first point of access is going to be where the wires go into the figure. So using the hook pick tool, I'm just going to pry in there. And as I start to pry, I see that the lid has a series of pins. Now these pins mean that the lid can only fit one way, and I'm going to need to be extra careful not to break them off like I have on other pieces such as the Department 56 lighting the jack-o'-lanterns. As the base did not come off, we're going to add more heat, try to loosen this up. There does appear to be a fair amount of hot glue holding this piece together. Now, working my pick tool around and working very slowly, I am able to pry the base off of the figure. I'm going to switch sides because the pins appear to be an alternating configuration, so again, I'm trying not to shear those off if I can keep from it. I have a feeling when I do my rewiring, because of the way that I wire things, it's going to be some tight clearances in here, so I want to make sure I can get those pins back into their original position to hold the base in as much as possible. Now that the lid is off, we can see how the electronics of this piece are. In order to access the LEDs, we're going to have to remove the Merry Christmas sign. I also call this a prism because it's a plastic piece that diffuses light. In order to get this out, it appears it only goes in one way, which is through the plastic base. So pushing it downward after I get it untangled, it simply comes right out. There is a little bit of glue that held this in place, but not much. And so far, this appears to be coming out pretty well. Now, I did just break the wires. As you can see, 3 of the LEDs just shut off. And that's fine, because I actually do not plan on recycling those itty-bitty little jumper wires between the LEDs. Instead, I'll be wiring in new wires altogether. And as I look closer at this, I see there's some damage to the wire, most likely from where I went in with the pick tool. And that's perfectly fine. This has a very long lead, and I'll just simply snip that off and work around it. Now the LEDs and the plastic prism are glued into place, and a couple of them just pop right out. The one on the very end is being a little bit difficult, and considering it is a rectangular style LED, I'll probably just use a pair of pliers and pop it out. Now this is mostly broken down, we can move on to removing the battery box. I'm going to be removing the battery box today on this project, and we're going to start by removing the retaining ring, and then I'll set that aside. Now, normally with these battery boxes, you often need a little bit of heat to get the glue to loosen that holds the backing on. However, today I'm just going to try with my pick tool and see what happens. Sometimes with these, especially the older ones, the glue is very weak, and it allows the backing to just come right off. Now, this one today is being a little bit stubborn, so I am going to use a little bit of heat. Now this is using my hairdryer on high heat and basically just going around the edges of this, and maybe 30-40 seconds tops. Now just using my hook pick tool, we're going to try the exact same thing again, and this time with a little bit more effort it comes right off. Now with these, there's often a dab of glue around the DC jack, however this one has it more or less around the wires. This was kind of common in some of the older stuff, but definitely in all of the newer stuff using the 4.5 volt battery packs, there is generally a significant amount of glue under the jack. So here we have our positive on the left and our negative on the right. So I will be cutting off at the resistor, and then the very bottom negative leg, I actually cut that off because I don't need it. And I'll just solder it onto the side over here. I like to have a little bit of space when I make these solder connections, so you could choose either or, completely up to you. Both will serve the exact same effect. Today I'm going to be using my helping hand to hold the DC jack in place. Now, as you can see, I've already stripped back the wire and I've broken my own golden rule. When possible, you should always put the heat shrink on the wire first and then strip. This just prevents any stray strands of wire from potentially being out of the solder connection and to prevent any possible shorts. Now with all of my solder connections, I do use a little bit of flux because this makes it significantly easier and faster. You don't have to use flux, but you do have to spend a little bit more time soldering. With flux, I mean, if you've watched any of my previous videos, I can solder in my hand and that connection is solid. And that is done in a millisecond versus 4 to 5 seconds of holding it, which would burn my fingers. With the connection in place, I'll slide the heat shrink up and make sure that there are no stray strands of wire sticking out anywhere, and use my lighter to secure the heat shrink. I'll repeat this process for the other leg as well. As the way I wire in parallel, I generally put the resistor before the LEDs, and that will be hidden in the base of the Merry Christmas sign. After I make this last solder connection, what I normally do is take a large piece of heat shrink and cover the entire DC jack. This is just a little added safety measurement for my own benefit. Meanwhile, what I've already done is perfectly safe, and you can absolutely leave it like that and there will be no issues whatsoever. With the battery box removed, we can move on to the next step of replacing the LEDs. Before we swap out those LEDs, let's take a quick look at the LED information. These will be 3mm 3 to 3.2 volt, 20 milliamp, 0.25 watt warm white LEDs. Now, let's calculate for resistance per LED. Using a 3 volt power source and a 3 volt LED, that leaves me with 0 volts. In order to protect the LED, I'll be using a 10 ohm plus or minus 5% resistor for this project. I've already gone ahead and soldered on the resistor to each LED and applied heat shrink around it. These will be bent at a very close 90-degree angle. So I am going to go ahead and start by checking my polarity and strip back the wires with a lighter. Now I could be using some wire strippers for this, however this gauge wire and generally the age of the wire becomes a little bit more brittle. I generally prefer just the lighter method of just burn and pull off the sheathing. However, again, I broke my golden rule and did not put my heat shrink on first, so I am now sliding on some heat shrink and fixing the fraying wires that do come up. I'll solder with a little bit of flux. As you see, very fast. Just dab and you're done. Trim off the excess, slide up the heat shrink, and I can use my lighter to secure it in place. Now, you can't use other things other than a lighter to secure heat shrink. There are multiple heat tools that have deflector shields on them. Pardon the Star Trek reference. But it is basically just a curved round piece that deflects the heat back, so it does activate the heat shrink. With these, I have already put in a little bit of a pigtail that'll go from this LED to the next LED. And I'm going to wire these live so I can make sure A, I'm getting my polarity correct, and B, that they work. Considering I did such a tight bend at the base of the LEDs, I actually did wind up breaking 2 of these and had to redo them. This process is a very rinse and repeat heavy process, so just sit back and enjoy. What the overall goal is to make the first solder connection with the leads going off of it. I'll take the next LED and the first soldered LED and actually place it into the base of the Merry Christmas sign. That way I can measure how far I need between the two, cut off any excess, and get ready to solder again. And each time we're adding a tail on and on and on and on. So there will be 4 resistors and 4 LEDs in the base of the Merry Christmas sign when this is all said and done with. So as you can see here, that warm white already makes, in my opinion, a huge difference. And I really like how this is going to look versus the old orange washed out lights. But as you can see, there was my process. I put it in, I measured with my fingers how far it's going to be between the two. I have my pigtail here, we're snipping that off. And I'm going to go ahead and get the next LED ready with its pigtails as well. Well, it took about 15 minutes to get the first 3 of 4 LEDs in place, and I'm on the last one now. Taking a quick look at this circuit, we can see how the LEDs fit, and the fixture is really going to shine. It's going to look great, but something is going to be really tight, and that's going to be the clearances for the LEDs and wires in the base. I believe everything's going to fit, but it's going to be very tight. Once I get this last LED in place, we can move on to reassembling the Merry Christmas Yard sign. My apologies for the shaky camera. I've got my low temp hot glue gun ready to go with some of my favorite low temp hot glue from Michaels, and all I'm going to be doing is putting a small dab in each of the channels for the LED for the Merry Christmas sign. Now I am going to go ahead before I do that and line up the backing, as it was kind of off-kiltered before. Using a small dab in each channel, I'll simply place the LEDs in and press and hold. With the LEDs in place, I can then put the prism back through the base and then secure its lid. While I'm working the prism through the base, I'm taking care to not catch or rip the paper backing. I want to make sure this stays intact so the look is complete. Now, with the prism in place, I'm going to work the wires around. As you can see, there's a little bit more in there than what started. I am going to go ahead and take the lid for the base and do a dry fitting to make sure everything fits and adjust things as necessary, because I do have excess wire and I need to make sure that everything is clean also before I put it back together. So there's some excess glue I forgot to take off earlier. Go ahead and push some things down, do another dry fitting before I put a few dabs of hot glue onto each of the pegs and line it up to the proper hole. Then I'll apply positive pressure and allow it to dry. And now we can move on to our final reveal. Let's take a quick look at the before, and now the after. Minus a little bit of light glow from the bottom, I am really happy with this. Now I'll hide all of that in the village itself, so it's nothing to be concerned about. So tell me, what did you think of this project? What would you have done differently? Would you have done a different style LED? Or maybe an LED with an effect? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And if you like this video, like and subscribe for more. Happy holidays, and thank you for watching. Lemax Yard Sign, Merry Christmas Reimagined.